Hello, there's a guy I don't know. When I was a kid, he lived in front of my high school. I had a backyard that touched the parking lot. I only met him a few times. Fred Grisey, like 5 times, and briefly, and then like outside of his house, like I don't know, maybe 4 times. And I handed in for my health class project. He was tied to confessions and all kinds of natures of crime and crime acts, tied to his cousin, Phil Clo, who I still didn't know at the time, because this was also recorded and confessed, tied to modern, present, relevant, and past KKK themed, Confederate flag themed, and other nations, drug cliques, and polarity natures, with impressions on the streets and with games with fact treatment, recorded tied to crimes with cases, and with evidences, treatment, tricks, and crime methods, maintain criminally foreign influence through maintenance of systems, intercampuses, intertypes of campus. That's also including unrealized policings, like recorded trainings and relationships to kids, interbranch types, like with a school with nuns. I think it's like Moreland. I don't know if that's the play. I hope it's not. But what it is maintained by interbranch, maintained criminally foreign influenced. The same way they were. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a police former, not a criminal. The same way they were with colonization, which is critical to understand, because our founders did not just because they didn't have free speech, because the speech they had was in place for a breaching method, an engineering of life progression cover-up natures, of uses of those life progression and cover-up natures, to perpetually use the life progressions, to perpetually use a method that keeps the sequence nature needed to demonstrate the real causes of problems maintained, incapable of being discerned by people through and as a crime method also recorded, capable of maintaining lawyers in collusion with interbranch database solution stacking, private database solution stacking, juxtaposed with overt and unrealized criminal internation enterprises, and juxtaposed with legalized criminal enterprises as shared policing for since before our nation's founders, for and as a fact treatment nature organized crime method, where it has all the hurt. So Fred Grisey communicated to me up front. He was associated with people trying to hurt me with evidences crimes, interbranch, and with others. I had nothing to do with them. Anthony Agman, I had nothing to do with Anthony Agman, Daniel Agman. I only knew him for brief moments. Where they communicated, demonstrated they were tied to the same thing. People where everyone was telling lies and stuff, like they were being trained for, like with detectives recorded through time also. In other words, that stacked them to crime rules with them. Now, as proven sex offenders tied people with crimes further with them, and with worse tied to the recently reported sentenced principal sex offender, because there was worse people confessed and recorded with the police, with the doctors recorded with their and confessed by their colleagues and by themselves, verbally and in writing, attached to crimes with various natures of agencies and with federal criminals that had with crimes and cases with them, already proven federal criminals, but they had crimes and cases with them, and through kids further recorded and confessed ties. Also within them now as adults and as interbranch police and criminal justice cliques that were raised. Mike Del Ferro also. I don't know him. I only like brief moments he made confessions and when I was a kid about tied to this and demonstrated with his father and his brother. They were directed to evidence crime rules, database solution stacking crime rules, and then they would demonstrate that, and then they would go spread rumors tied to their crimes and as crime rules and cases with areas illusion, pretending they're doing vetting and stuff like that, tied to a Paul Kelly house across the street, recorded and confessed, involved with men and women that abused those kids. Those girls across the street, I believe I read they won a lottery for life. I never met one. Thank God. I feel they were abused though, but so I don't know if they like it or not. You know what I mean? Because Paul Kelly said he liked it because he did acid. I don't even know that kid, and now he's reportedly in the Air Force. He repeated that the only time I met him, 1 or 2 times. He was repeating that. I never did acid with him. Never did acid with anyone. I never did in other words, that was tied to a Mark Violet too. Not directed with confessions. I met him through my. I never had a class with him. Met him through my neighbor with the confession. They were all making different confessions, demonstrating they were victims of what people making fake sides of issues, all with different and weaving everyone interwoven where everyone wants to make fact sheets and make things about emotions and things, not real premises. They give it sequence shifts is part of the recorded problem because they've database solution stacking pretended things against kids through time. They told lies, both sides of the news about me. Fake, they had no conversation with me. Do that too to a sequence shift because now so they could pretend they don't understand me. I speak very clear the way it's here. And they're trying to make it personal because I appreciate the news and need the news, but it needed to be true. And not sequence shifting, trying to set things up to, and with harassment also recorded. Include with our police forms, foreign and domestic, with their families and with medical families, with police forms too, that are doctors of psychology, recorded with worse than physical delusions. Criminal internation persuasions. Also ducking behind and using the measured and exploited, not realized, worse than not realized. Oz. With the sequence shifts that with defenses of that by pretending offensively to believe that just because it came from Russia that's Russian, and to pretend that our agencies and our police and associated with interbranch with Sandy Hook investigators, doctors, and courts recorded and confessed with their family members and themselves tied to crimes on, off, intercampuses through time stemmed from them as victims, but as victim predators of interbranch investigations into where and how everything's being exploited in relationship to fact-sheet nature, in relationship to positive and what is not, and what is moral, in relationship to and as abridged fact-cheaping nature forced since before our founders. That can't justify and self-defend itself and explain the organized crime method that used and uses color, that used and uses politics and non-value nature things pretending to be value nature. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't money that made slavery motivated. It was internation collusion till it made the internation sciences inclusion, then that, and with a method juxtaposing other people to other interests and to other narratives consciously, knowing that was their agenda, and the other people with the narratives are just victim predator going down, taking part of any part of slavery. Especially the worst physical parts of it. You know what I mean? See, but to counter the worst physical parts of it, you have to be able to understand and counter the suburban trap, which is simultaneously. See, you can't do this as comparison nature. You have to use a correlation nature. That's what the color was used for, by both black and white agencies, using this forced entertained. By Asian too, white, Russian, China, America have the same enemy as every nation has. But if we could realize this, like, for example, in relationship to all that ignored within that pseudo-positive fake morality and justifications of that, in relationship to treatments of needs for arms races and in relationship to how the best way to do is to attach the nature and time of everything to evolution, to what it wants, everyone, where we are. And why you're doing that is as a nature that can handle, who has no homeland yet, can handle homelessness right away, 1 second, whoops, into an adapting form. But we have to be able to do it knowing our nations are unequally hurt. And with that tied to that pseudo-positive is also tied to treatments of where nations that can't defend themselves from the pseudo-positive crushing every nation, blaming out others because it's only capable of doing that. It was only trained to do that. Only trained to blame forced sabotage there and here, tied to Joseph Mengele and entrenched already since before our founders' births, psychology corruption and roles with the breaching method that kept branches only let realized roles blaming out others, themselves stacking database illusions in collusion with criminally foreign influence areas maintained, criminally foreign influence campus Marcius. Campuses of all different types specifically to maintain fact treatment that you're incapable of proper fact treatment, of blaming the persistence of perpetual the same premise mistreatments with the same physical delusions. I'm blaming it on others. Per method facilitated this to be perpetually maintained, self-maintained, self-cultivated. That's what they do when they go after, call it radical Islam. This is like how they put Los Solitos people to go speak in school through Fox CT, real or undercover, because they're also recorded with undercovers, recorded and confessed involved with the child sex offender cliques intercity tied though to my era, tied to the ones in my area, and with this reported sex offender recently reported in WFSB the same rate that time a Faenza family with a tile company recorded and confessed involved with crimes with the rest of the people that just before that. They arrested me with wire crime, sequence shifts, evidence fabrications, hid confessions tied to that from the same principle I'm talking about. I'm not going to go into the name or anything. But the Enzo Faenza also recorded and confessed involved with the same guys that my neighbors demonstrated and confessed crime rolls with, and with kids recorded and confessed crime rolls with him for that used them for evidence crimes, and those people were recorded and confessed as adults involved with intercampuses crimes on Trinity campus, tied to untimely death too, tied to database solution stacking. They attached me to fake conversations, relationship to people through time tied to this. Every campus I went to, and on off the campus relationships to the family members of my professors, and or placements in my classes, and our personal relationships to the professors. And so they stacked many names, and they're using that as a means to not let people speak. And through time, they've been even, they're pretending people have autism. Also, there are proofs that they're putting stuff in some kind of drug, messing people up. Especially when you do that as kids, you know what I mean? Because we have doctors who are also investigators interbranch, also recorded and confessed involved with evidence crime methods and cases through time, of even keeping, stacking fake witness, fake police reports consciously, illusion stacking in databases of courts, using cases to hurt the victims offensively. If they try to put them there, pretend something else, and they don't follow the rules, and then they can't do it in the future. And they're hiding the recorded roles of the people with the prison since I was a kid, with the same cliques. There's a woman, I don't know her name, with a red hair, recorded and confessed involved with a whole bunch of people tied to a Brendan Lethe and this Fred Cruzet and Yagnan family I had nothing to do with. The only three exceptions were all recorded and confessed tied to them, involved with drug crimes and evidence crimes with areas, and with people pretending, tied to people that pretended behind my back to know me through time, tied to on and off campus database illusion stacking, their roles with drugs through the kids, tied to the people placed in my classrooms that then went on to pretend I had relationships to doctors as kids that weren't at all. And as people, they did that as an adult just by forcing me in for a psychological evaluation as a trick to hide from complaints that were intercity recorded and confessed from them, from police intercity, intercampus, and from police tied to them and their family members. Sequentially, progressively, people coerced, including police, to witness crime rolls, with people associated in various ways with all patterns tied to it as federal criminals with further federal crime acts, also with agencies tied to their co-defendant in a case that they attached me to fake conversations about. With their co-defendant was former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. One of his defendants was a daughter of my grade, recorded and confessed involved by people I only know, like a girl, I don't even know her name. She's a young woman now associated with Trinity. She would say I know her as a fact treatment crime. her motivation to it was because the only time she walked up to me and made statements and stood next to me for a second, tied to a Joe DeMoro and her, and a Heather Hansen, also recorded and confessed involved on off-campus crimes. Also with a Neville, Rick Chamfayone, also recorded and confessed that, tied to his crimes with he implied that the Neville crimes. Well, I was in 8th grade. I never had a class with Rick in grammar school. Rick Chamfayone, because his brother and sister and father and mother were quite involved with interbranch actors, like in a court, associated with, in other words, with them, with also online rape threats against me, against mothers they have fight, real or fake. They said it was that one went into the house and tried to threaten the other mother, and they're hurting both girls. And then they taken the EMS to the doctor. The doctors are recording and confessed involved because they have the drug crimes and an untimely death over here that brought up the child sex offenders. Also recorded and confessed involved with other natures of people involved with my area, with a former dispatcher, police dispatcher, and people with her one brother of one of the sex offenders recorded and confessed tied to Stop and Shop managers and police forms with the stores, and even with the arrest in the doctors of the sex offender principal, recorded and confessed with worse crime roles with the Facebook policing and with the kids, and with the forced crime method that is juxtaposed using drugs, sex crime acts with psychologists facilitated to it by this, and as it raised as victim predators for child abuse. That's how when we have sick women like that attach me to fake crimes. I can't do business. I can't leave the country till I get them to fix. They attach me and my family to crimes, a fake conversation about Saudi Arabia with this too. And they had crime rolls with that's witness fabrications too, about the evidence from the my father proved in the Ninth Circuit Court. Not that day, it was a part of the case, but afterwards he proved that there had been sequence shift from inside the court. In other words, he had brought on time his parts of a civil RICO suit against a former director of the FBI, and his federal criminals already since before that, but that were his co-defendants, and one of them had a daughter in my grade, and the other ones had other relationships in the past, in the present active, like tied to a Thaddeus Grabowski, into a what's her name? Allison Mulcahy. I never had a conversation with her in my life. Recorded and confessed involved by other police involved with the child crimes, tied to their roles with database solution stacking, evidence crime roles, and other natures of it with the kids when I was a kid, like Mike DeMaine. That's the only context I know him in. Recorded and confessed, tied to his crime roles with the people trying to hurt me by not letting me report the people with the confessions with Mike, with Del Ferro, Mike Del Ferro, Chris Del Ferro. He's got like 3-4 other brothers, a mother and father, all kinds of I never had anything to do with them. They sought me out to make all these confessions, and then with after I recorded that too, and this is in progression from the confessions from the and demonstrations. I just thought it was a natural sick nature of Debbie Gold. I had nothing to do with her, just because in other words, the only 2 moments I even had saw her in my face. Like, I never saw her in a class. You see her every day. Never. One time we had a class. We had a thing. It was like we had a good relationship. You know what I mean? I mean, not we rolled the dreidel or whatever on the floor as little kids. I was polite. There was no problem. I mentioned, I don't know who that was other time. There was one other time that I don't know. I forged my parents' name with the stamp thing because they gave me a letter. But I was a little kind of wanted to get in trouble because they set up a thing there that was complicated to explain because it was being exploited. It was like a game with two brothers on my street named, Andy and Tim O'Brien. They were, and their parents. They were victims too. But it was like what was promoting them in the executive branch is like detectives and stuff to pull over evidence crime roles, illusion stacking, evidence reception crime roles, offensive and preemptive for the future. But that was facilitated by what was keeping our nations juxtaposed, like would they have the Russian spy then? That's tied to what is a victim against each of our nations, Russians and Americans. We don't want to be represented by what holds justifications of the progressions and what they think is needed because they can't show the nature of every nation energy onto a path that is also positive onto itself as the cause of evolution, as the cause of what is not a nature that seeks war or wants war or needs war. You see what I'm saying? That until the bottom is a nature that can evolve everyone equally. Well, you can't. It's not even equal. There's simultaneously worse than exploited and tactically measured or exploited by fact, cheap, and nature simultaneously measured, not realizing they're the only ones that have to that are the definition of patriotism that we have to use as correlation to take away from what is not, which is how it's breached. For shared police since before our founders' births. So we're not being let ratiocination, which is able to discern the difference between pseudo-ratiocination and ratiocination. But this is by a value nature system, whereas the organized crime method is using a tactical ulterior from actual value nature system to tell everyone to work anyways. But if you go to work, you're going to get hurt at work because you're going to get tired. You're not going to be able to learn. How much are you going to read? You're going to go for, that's in other words, minimum wage and stuff like that. This is a game tied to they set up before our founders' birth. They set up the plan of tactically denatured house styles before our cars were born. It was part of the factory of nature slavery on everyone. Every single person had no free speech and was forced to pretend other because they were seeding long term. They knew we would have to look back. They're already experts on this since some ancient times. It is more probable that the ancients had magnifying glasses. There are physical delusions enough recorded in regards to the reception of evidences regarding the capabilities of the ancients regarding who invented what regarding. In other words, we have a database illusion stacking since some ancient times. It's just a mind's coordinated conclusion within as only that realized value of the news. For the valuable value nature system, that with was is with originally stay recorded, criminally foreign internation, maintained, interbranch directed, off the records, told database illusion stacking roles, verbal federal crime roles, systemic, per the only people let be the ones counter how we all react with opinions together to counter online hurt. It's by what was is keeping, both the victims and the predators juxtaposed with their roles, by the breaching method juxtaposed, keeping our branches reliant upon various natures of courts, reliant upon criminal natures with psychology and with triage databases and evidence perception natures. Mental diagnosis recorded, engineered, tied as things that people would need to describe, recorded, tied to the offensive crimes of the families, tied to the people who forged names and pretend they had conversations as doctors to diagnose, like a Lethe family. In other words, Lethe family recorded harassing me, and with court people tied to them, per their friends and stuff like that, recorded and confessed, involved criminally with drugs through time, and with people directed to make confessions that I only know from them from context where they're directed to make confessions about that and about roles with evidences, crimes where federal overt criminal enterprises, federal criminals of various natures, all recorded juxtaposed. And then they're recorded, facilitated to uses of people's names that, like mine. And like with all the people tied to the people in my grade associated with the drug dealers through them that were the federal criminals that were the co-defendants of the former director of the FBI. In my father's case, and they're with Local 230, also recorded and confessed, tied to crimes with Kelly Kazmierek and her father and family, with agencies and with overt federal criminals with kids through time, with houses around schools. I never met her in my life. That was on Facebook, and that was tied to Anthony Agnew, also recorded and confessed with crimes with a Lethe family, with a Wethersfield police, with crimes with the overt proven child sex offenders, and ones recorded and further confessed, tied to recently reported sentence principal of the school. They were the police were also recorded using Facebook in the course from before that to threaten and to spread rumors, lies tied to fake police reports and lies that people that were told on the campus of CCSU by police forms and families on and off campus, together inclusion on campus and off campus with writing. And thank you. So that's also tied to the street of Paul Manafort Drive. Recorded needs for them to hide, also recorded and confessed, juxtaposed, people associated with New York and Connecticut criminal justice corruption, interbranch corruption through time, internation, with other like Town Line Drive, recorded and confessed, involved with a bunch of people. They use my name directed to evidence perception crime roles with with a town line mobile, and with a place across the street from it. I never had anything to do with Dominic Abate in my life, only online that he talked recorded. And I never had one conversation with him. The one time I was in his presence at that place on tour, also recorded and confessed, tied to the untimely deaths on Trinity College, off Trinity College, with the cliques with the child sex offenders, and with the judges' families recorded and confessed by them. I don't know if it's true or not, but tied to it as the Delafair family. Also, like the only time they said I went real somewhere with them, he took me to a fireplace, and there was like, he was like talking black or whatever, like rackets they have with that, where they're hurting the North End with their roles with criminal justice, with other people. Like I don't know his name is Dave, I think, tied to Joe DeMoro, and a Kerr family, tied to the police who arrested, tied to the Ames policing, and other stores like Caldor's. In Cromwell, I think they're still open. With a John DeMoro, and then there's two Joe DeMoros from Rocky Hill and Weathersfield, both with like a Heather Hansen, two twins, like all these people recorded and confessed with database, illusion stacking, evidence crime rolls, male type crime rolls, crimes with male type people associated with UPS, and with at the corner of Maple Street, at the corner of Fairlane and Drive, and Griswold Street through life, people tied to that house with a male guy recorded and confessed involved with crimes with Joshua Stryker. I never had a conversation with, my life never had anything to do with. Recorded and confessed involved with crimes with recorded and confessed by a Dean Alford and or someone pretending to be him on off campus with crimes with people tied to Mike, that used Mike per them. They used Mike Oliver from boxing and Greg Kyler from boxing for evidences crimes and for other natures of crime rolls with evidences. And I never saw Greg since he was a little kid, and they pretended other per them. Also tied to Lacey Ann, recorded and confessed and demonstrated, involved with coercions of men and women, where they cultivated to all different kinds of witness fabrication roles and evidence crime roles that they don't understand the extent of, but through needs to hide recorded and confessed force needed lie progression cover-up natures and needs. Now, how they need to be forced to be lie progression cover-up natures is important, because it's how our police are maintained criminally foreign influenced. But you have to understand how the courts are maintained criminally foreign influenced at the same time. And with people with the state judicial branch recorded and confessed involved with color games through time, tied to the roles with drugs with the kids, and slandering people with people they never had conversations with, that they then raised to courts positions where they can't tell the truth and defend us at time. Same time, they have to stay indifferent to database illusion stacking against people. And with as and how the courts were the prisons were leaderships were motivated, cultivated to self needs to hide lies and progressions tied to it, tied to rackets facilitated on off campuses, and inter-age of campus, through policing, tied to a crime method that's needing to adapt now from an as means to adapt originally as a database or organized crime method. I'm not a police form, not a lawyer, so I'm not a criminal. This is American history. This is the tactic that used color. This is the tactic that wouldn't let anybody talk about building infrastructure outside of a criminally monitored, internation monitored database of relationships. Only not even allowed talked about as that, because they don't want it figured out that it was an internation. They wanted consciously everybody invested as fact treatment nature roles in natures of identity in relationship to the like all cells of a body that's dying. You know what I'm saying? Instead of one that's and justifying it, instead of one that's fighting. You know, that is evolving. That is life. That is gaining value, which is only onto all parts of itself, everybody. See, we have a value nature system that doesn't reach out to everybody. And it's blaming on politics. And or simultaneously blaming, it's simultaneously measured and invested multi-front against each position of fact treatment nature. It's keeping our voices simultaneously incapable of correcting the fact mistreatments. No, you know, in other words, of each, they're making it personal. In other words, there is a crime method keeping fact treatment nature to keep exploited. In other words, keeping it degraded to keep exploitations of the life progressions from the maintained life progression cover-up nature needs and natures maintained as victims, but as victim predators per theater with this originally in state as you know. See, but we have to allow crime acts reported, not just, you know, outside of court, which is not let, because they're hiding crimes they already had in cases through time. Life progressions are already exploited through time. All kinds of evidence and rules hacks. That's what there's no care for the people before and or after. Because in other words, you don't threaten people by basically saying, "Oh, jail's hard," or by like putting them in there, make them know hard. How you make them do is understand nature's relationship to itself. Understand what the natures of the law is, which is a nature of forgiveness for areas that never let voice, because it was still blaming. It was made as a tool to blame.